you pack up the suitcases, you get all your holiday things in, you pack the kids in the car, and you actually don't know where you're going. And you end up highways and through valleys and all around but you don't know where you're going because you haven't set the destination in the GPS. So the car's just driving around without any destination. And that is the best metaphor I've ever heard for describing what it's like when you don't set goals.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and this week's episode, we are going to be talking about goals. Now, goals, it doesn't matter if it's January, if it's July, or it's December. Goals seem to be a conversation that we're either having or thinking about or trying to work into our lives. And today I've got an amazing guest who's been on our podcast several times. She is none other than Debbie Roberts, the co-author of E-Myth Bookkeeper. She is also the co-founder of Pure Bookkeeping, and she is one hell of a great bookkeeper and an advocate of bookkeepers around the world. She loves bookkeepers and she loves seeing bookkeepers succeed. So she is the perfect guest to have on the show. Welcome back, Debbie.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael, and thank you for that introduction. That's very gracious of you.
Yes, well, you're doing great work with the community all over the world. So, Deb, we decided to talk about goals today. What's on your mind around goals?
Well, as you said, it doesn't matter what time of the year that you do set your goals, but it is the beginning of the year. So I started to think about the time when I was working with Peter Cook. Every year in January, we had a full day meeting, planning meeting. I didn't particularly like them because it was difficult to think about the goals and plan your vision and where do you want to be and things like that. I always struggled with that. And yet we still had them though. And I thought, look, to the community about the importance of setting goals, find out why they're struggling with that, help them identify where they're struggling and what they need to do to overcome that. So, but it doesn't matter. It is the beginning of the year, but it doesn't matter what time of the year. You've just got to do it.
Absolutely. And what was it about those all-day planning sessions that I mean, I think that's probably uncommon for a lot of our listeners. Talk a little bit about what you did during those all-day planning sessions.
Well, part of it was reviewing how did we go last year. So did I reach the targets that I had set for last year? And then what didn't work then? Why did I miss certain targets? Where did I do well? What could I do better? So there was quite a bit of time spent reviewing the past year. And, that took several hours, probably even half the day, because it was right down into the detail. It was things like if I didn't meet with 4 accountants a week and I didn't hit that, why didn't I hit that? What was it that got in the way of that? And really dig deep into the psychology of that. Was I avoiding it? And if I was avoiding it, why? And how can we resolve that so that I don't avoid the things that I don't want to do, which is pretty common. And then the other half of the day was planning what we wanted to achieve in the next year. We had already set goals for 3 and 5 years. So what we did was we would just review those. Are we still on track? Is that really what I want in 3 to 5 years? And I'd tweak that if it didn't quite align. And then we would plan specific goals for the next year, 9 months, 6 months, 3 months, and monthly goals. So it was really quite specific and very detailed.
It really is extraordinary, the level of detail and the amount of time and energy you put into it. This is not a common, I would say, not a common behavior in most businesses.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I think absolutely. And it's surprising that despite the fact that everyone will have heard that you need to set goals, it's something that it's not very common and not very common in the bookkeeping industry specifically.
Yeah, not very common. Now let's talk a little bit about your results specifically, because your results are not common either. Back in the day, we're talking 10 or 15 years ago in terms of when you were doing this planning and work. For the listeners that maybe this is their first episode, talk a little bit about where you went and where you actually went to with your business.
Oh, well, I started off as a sole trader on my own, just working from home with 0 clients. I was an employee. I had a job as an employee and I kept that job. And then I grew my business until I had a black belt business and a dozen staff in that time. And, of course, I made every conceivable mistake along the way. So, and Peter Cook helped me overcome those issues and eventually sold my business in 2014.
So this goal stuff works.
It does. Oh, look, it is, I can't overemphasize it. And I get that it's not a comfortable thing to do. And I'd actually like to talk a little bit about that because it's the one thing that stops us from doing this. And it's kind of passively resisting. It's not like you say, I'm not going to set goals. You don't make it a statement or anything. You just passively resist doing it. So you just find ways, oh, yeah, well, I want to grow my business. Yes, I'm going to grow. So you can be vague about it. I am going to grow my business. That's vague. That's not a goal because there's no figure about what dollar you want to turn over or how many staff you want to have or how many clients you want to have, how many bookkeeping hours you're going to bill out, all those sorts of details. You just say, I want to grow my business. And the main reason is because we fear failure. We fear that what will people think of us if we don't hit those goals. And that was very real for me, and that was my fear as well. And I think everyone could relate to that. The funny thing about that is that no one actually cares. We think that all the world is looking at us and spying on us and going to critique us and be critical and all those sorts of things and looking for us to fail. They don't actually care that much. They're all busy getting on with their own world and they've got their own things to deal with and their own businesses to grow and their own. They're very busy. Everyone's very busy in their own world. So we put way too much emphasis on what will people say if I declare out loud that I want to grow a black belt business or I want to turn over $100,000 in the next 12 months. What if I fail and I only get to 80? What will they think? They don't care. And in any case, if you've set a goal to turn over $100,000 and you get to 80, hey, high five. I think you've done pretty well. The reality is that you're more likely to achieve $80,000 if you set a goal for 100.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fear of this disappointment can be just really all-encompassing.
Yes, because we bring it all, that fear of failure about setting goals, we feel it's a reflection of our character. So we really internalize it and personalize it and all of that. And you've got to stop doing that because it's not that. It's not a judgment of your character. It's nothing to do with that. It's a preparation of where you want to be. And I've heard Peter and I've heard you say, Michael, as well, that it's a bit like if you decide you're going on a holiday, a vacation somewhere, and you pack up the suitcases, you get all your holiday things in, you pack the kids in the car, and you actually don't know where you're going. And you end up just driving up highways and through valleys and all around but you don't know where you're going because you haven't set the destination in the GPS. So the car's just driving around without any destination. And that is the best metaphor I've ever heard for describing what it's like when you don't set goals.
Yeah, very, very frustrating for sure.
Yeah.
Not a very enjoyable vacation to be driving around aimlessly.
Yeah. And the other thing that we can struggle with as well, I mentioned earlier that half the day in the beginning of the year was spent reviewing how I went in the year before. And that can be challenging. It's in itself. It's all great if you've hit your goals, but if you haven't hit your goals, it can be very to identify in quite a lot of detail where you went wrong. You know, what did actually go wrong? When why didn't you visit all those accountants that you said you were going to visit? What is it that you're afraid of? Identifying those sorts of things, that's facing your fears as well. And that can be challenging. So it makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable when you review how you've gone and whether you've hit your target. And I can understand why people are reluctant to actually. It's like ignorance is bliss in a way, but it's not actually. It's dangerous.
It is dangerous, and it's actually one that can be both sides of the sword. You could be either living in fantasy that, oh, I had a great year, or you could also be self-deprecating, saying I didn't accomplish enough, and I'm not going anywhere, and so living in ignorance to what's really gone on and doing a close analysis, you could be suffering from that.
Yes. And bookkeepers know this specifically because they spend their whole week, their whole lives working with clients, trying to show them what the facts are, trying to make the clients aware of what the dollars are saying, what the numbers are saying. So us talking to bookkeepers, they know this. They know that they need to know the facts because they talk to their clients. They sit their clients down and say, you need to know this. You need to know that your debtors are this. They've blown out to 90 days. You need to know that you won't be able to pay your bills in 3 months' time. You've got to pay your stuff. So they sit down all day long with their clients, giving them facts, empowering them around their finances, but they're not doing it in their own businesses. It's a really curious thing. That's where when we talk about working on the business, it's starting to think like you are the business owner. I need instructions from myself. So there's times where the bookkeeper comes to you and you have a meeting with the bookkeeper. You're the business owner. You're the one owning the bookkeeping business. And your bookkeeper comes to you and says, Deb, you need to look at these facts. I'm concerned about these numbers. And if you don't review that and spend time, I know it's busy. I know lives are busy and time just flies. This year will be gone before we even know it. So if you don't make the time, you won't be to review how you've gone. You won't be able to make those critical, strategical adjustments in a timely manner along the way as the months go past, so that the outcome for this year will be what you plan. You've really got to set that time aside.
Absolutely. And so where does someone start and put the line in the sand? How do we get to that line in the sand?
I think, so if you're a startup practice, maybe you don't have any clients, maybe you've got a half a dozen clients, work out what, you would know what your charge out rate is now and how much you're earning with those clients. Or if you are starting up and you have no clients at all, then you need to set a goal of what turnover you want to achieve by what amount of time. And that, of course, will depend. It's personal. So my goals are not your goals. I don't want what you want. You don't want what I want. It's all about you and what your needs are for your family. When I was starting my business, I said earlier that I had a job as an employee. Now, I was working and originally I was working 5 days a week, but I managed to cut that down to 4 and then to 3 as I started to get more clients. But I kept my day job because I needed to bring in a certain amount of money with my family into the household to help support. My husband was the breadwinner, but I still needed to help support the family. So I worked out that my very first goal was to replace the income that I earned from the day job. Now, that 18 years ago or so was not a lot of money, but it was a lot then. It was, put it in perspective, it was what it was then, but I still needed to replace that income. I wasn't prepared to quit that job until I replaced that income. And besides, it was my backup plan. If it all failed, then I still had my day job to fall back on. And it took me 12 months. Now, in those days, this is before I met Peter Cook, that was the only goal I set. So I didn't have a 3-year goal or a 5-year goal. I just thought, let's see how this goes, and set a goal to replace that income. And I did that in about 12 months. That was working at nights and weekends and any spare time that I had, because I had the job during the day and I had children and a family to run as well. So I did it slowly. I took my time, but I replaced that, and then I was able to quit that job. One of the challenges around that is, of course, you've got to work harder for a period of time because you're working at nights and weekends. And I think the other thing is, a goal needs to be something that makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable. It's a little bit of a stretch, but it's not completely unreasonable. Because if it's completely out there, then it's going to be too far off, and you'll get overwhelmed, and things won't work. When things don't work, you'll quit. So have it as something that you feel is attainable. It makes you feel a little bit excited, a little bit nervous, but you think, gee whiz, if all the planets aligned and I really concentrate and focus on what I need to do, I think that's actually a doable goal. And as I said, if you set a goal to turn over $100,000 and only reach 80 in 12 months, which is also, by the way, a doable goal, I think you'd be doing pretty well, and you could give yourself a pat on the back for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Deb, how does one set a time? I mean, you had a coach that you set aside the time to actually figure this stuff out. How does the listener right now say, hey, how do I get started doing this?
Yeah, I think it's great to have a buddy. You could have almost a board meeting, if you like, or a buddy, or whatever you'd like to call it. And certainly when you're starting up, getting a business coach is a considerable expense, and there are other ways that you can do that. But I think it's the accountability that's critical when you're setting goals. And I've said for years that I believe the reason I did achieve what I did was because of the accountability and the support that I had with Pete. So if you have someone in your life, now it might be your spouse, it might be your husband or wife, it could be another family member, it could be a close friend who maybe has a little bit of business sense about them, understands what it's like to run a business, that would be helpful. And have a monthly meeting with that person. So when, once again, I'll go back to the role of the bookkeeper. When you do finish your monthly processing for that client, you should be, and I'm expecting that you would be sitting down with that client and talking to them about the numbers and educating them about them and telling them whether they've achieved their target for that month and things like that. You need to have the same sort of meeting with yourself, but if you really want to raise the bar of accountability, then have it with someone else. Set the goals with someone else present so that they are aware of the goals that you've set. And that in itself raises the accountability. Using another analogy, if you want to get fit, it's more fun. Actually, if you've got a buddy to get fit with, and they also make you accountable. So if it's if you say, yes, I'm going to go for a walk 3 mornings a week, and we're going to meet at 6 o'clock in the morning before everyone gets up, and we'll walk for half an hour. When the winter sets in and things get tough, or you've had a late night, or things are disturbed, if you are on your own, if you're just doing it on your own, then it's very easy to just roll over in bed and pull the blankets up and go, oh no, it's too cold, I won't do that. But if you know that your friend is standing on for you to meet you on that corner, then you'll move mountains. You'll just drag yourself out of bed regardless of how you feel. So raising the bar of accountability, that's what happens when you have a buddy or a mentor or someone that you absolutely trust who will be able to guide you a little bit along the way, give you some advice and support as well when things go wrong. I think that's a good strategy. It's also, as I said, a lot more fun. You're not on your own. It can be very isolating growing a bookkeeping business. It's you. It's you doing the work. It's you trying to create it all. It's you trying to wear all your different leadership and hats and marketing and HR if you're recruiting and all of that. It can be challenging. Anything worthwhile is challenging, but you can make it easier for yourself. So it doesn't have to be all hard work. Buddy up with someone, get a mentor or friend, family who can make you accountable. And the other really important thing is to be very, very specific about your goals.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
Deb, I want to just point out something there that you mentioned, which is the overarching theme here is don't do it alone.
Yeah, don't do it alone. Yep.
Doing it alone, I'm going to guess the whole audience here listening, we've all done it alone for big parts of our life. And when we stop doing it alone, things go a lot better. And so finding that person in your life, whoever it is, as Deb mentioned, find somebody who's trying to get somewhere and is passionate about getting somewhere and join up with them and work together to figure this out. I want to say that we do have an excellent resource in our community resources. So as people may or may not know, listeners, we are offering a lifetime membership to the Successful Bookkeeper community. And in that, you get a whole bunch of benefits and all sorts of awesomeness. One of those pieces is an action plan. So a lot of the things that Deb's talking about, we have that in the action plan. And guess what? They came from Deb because this book, The Successful Bookkeeper, was written about you, Deb, right? And you are the Successful Bookkeeper. And so I want to point that out. So, and all you need to do is go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com, sign up for a membership to the community, get access to that, and you'll find that resource as well as a whole bunch of other great resources inside of that to get started. And it's a roadmap. It's a guide to get you started. So you could find a partner, someone in your BNI or the chamber or your friends, family, whatever it is, get together with them, start working on this right away.
Absolutely. That's a great opportunity.
Yeah, and I wanted to just make sure we pointed that out because these are some of the gold that you worked with when you were working with Peter. And we put this in the book. So it's great stuff.
And the second thing, as I mentioned, was that they need to be very specific goals. And that includes a date. So you need to. So, for example, this year by December this year, or whenever you're listening to this podcast, set a date 12 months from now about where you want to be. It's 12 monthly goals. 3 to 5 year goals are also important. They're the big picture ones, especially the 5-year goal. So you might be starting up now, but in 5 years you want to be at black belt, which is very doable. That's a great goal to have in 5 to 6 years. You might find you'll get there in 4, but if you set it for 5 years, getting to black belt, that's a very achievable goal. Then when you've set those three goals, 12 month, 3 years, 5 years, come back and then say, okay, if this is where I want to be in 12 months, what do I need to do in the next month? So and that will include things like there'll be a turnover you want to aim for, but turnover, go backwards and think, what do I do to get that turnover? Well, it's your bookkeeping. So how many hours a week are you going to add on each week? And in order to add on those hours, you need to do your marketing. So going backwards, It's like rewinding the tape. You've set the picture of where you want to be. Now rewind it. What do I need to do this month, this week, this day to help me achieve my goals in 12 months' time? And that will be marketing. Because if you're going to go from startup to white belt, which is turning over 100,000, Michael, is that correct?
Yeah, it was a thing I wanted to come back to, and I was actually just thinking, how do I, just a little off topic now, but it was way back in the beginning, you talked about white belt, black belt, that you actually went to a black belt. So basically there are a white belt, which is $100,000, right up to black belt, which is $500,000. And it's a really...
Or more.
Or more.
500,000
Plus,
or more.
You got it. You got it. And it's fantastic. This was put together by you and Pete. And this really is a blueprint. It's the bookkeeping business blueprint, of which you can get on the Successful Bookkeeper, in the Successful Bookkeeper community as well, to sort of look at, well, what is it that you need to be doing at 100,000? What do you need to be doing to get up to that 200,000? And when you're at 200,000, what is it that you need to do there? Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because, and to clarify that for all the listeners, it's a fabulous little one-page document that you can pin up on your wall or, save it as your screensaver or something like that. And you can just be looking at it and referring to it. And that's when we talk about a business plan, there's your business plan on a page, essentially.
It's already built for you.
It's already built. You put that up on your wall, and when you look up at that, you think, yes, that's right. This is the reason why I'm doing this. This is why I'm pushing through this pain. This is why I'm doing marketing when I don't feel like it. This is why I'm going to a networking meeting and getting out of bed in the morning and visiting prospects and handing out business cards, all those sorts of things. All the hard stuff that when we say hard, things that you don't feel so comfortable with. And typically bookkeepers aren't comfortable with marketing. There are exceptions, but the majority of bookkeepers don't particularly like marketing. So that's going to be the biggest challenge when you're starting up, is to be comfortable, to be okay when I say to be comfortable to get out of your comfort zone.
That's right.
And just do it regardless of how you feel. It's like getting up in the morning, going to exercise regardless of how you feel, regardless of the weather. You don't make excuses. You've made a promise. You've made a commitment. You've got a buddy. You've got a person that's depending on you. You don't let them down. So be specific. Set aside the goals. Think back, well, how am I going to turn over $100,000 in 12 months? I'll need this many clients charging this hourly rate, and then you look at your hourly rate. Well, are you charging enough? Do you need to put up your price? What difference would it make to your goal of getting to 100,000 if you put up your price as $10 or $15 an hour because you are undercharging? Just by putting up your prices by that amount of money, that could make a significant road towards your achieving your goal. It's these little details. I had a KPI report, so key performance indicator report, that I completed every month, which said what my turnover was, how many accountants I visited, what new clients I put on, how many new hours I brought in that month, so of the new clients, whether any of them were rescue jobs. The new clients and rescues always ended up, or most of the time ended up being ongoing maintenance clients, so that was a measure of my KPI to make sure that I always had new clients coming on board, or I was doing a rescue job, or my staff were doing a rescue job. You need to be tracking this sort of information.
Absolutely. And business success is more like growing an award-winning vineyard. You're going to put seeds in the ground, you're going to nurture the soil, you're going to build fences, you're going to clip water for years and years and years until eventually you'll get to the outcome. There's very little instant gratification in growing an award-winning vineyard. But they do it based on the belief and faith and the knowledge of those that have gone before them, that if they do certain things and follow certain guidelines, that they will get to the end goal. And that's why they do it, Business is no different. You plant the seed, you nurture it, you work, you do the work, you do the things, you check in, you keep following those that have gone there before, and you'll get the outcome that others have achieved. And in fact, building a successful business is so much easier than building an award-winning vineyard, right?
Yes.
And that's a little
sure.
tip to where you are down in Australia with lots of award-winning vineyards down there. And a tip to the hat to the farmer that has to work really, really hard to produce the things that we eat and drink and all that good stuff. But this is it, right? So for the listener out there, Deb's given you some gold. We got some gold in the community. Start planting seeds, nurture, water.
Yes.
Bring people around you. The people are like your fertilizer, right? Get those people around you, and then you need a couple of people who are like the pruners, right? They're the ones that give you you were talking about that before we got on the show, Deb, the people that give you the swift kick in a butt, right?
Yes,
it's like you got to clip back the buds a little bit. You need that. The plant needs it to grow. So do that. And one thing I want to mention too, Deb, is that you talked about the blueprint. Your book, E-Myth Bookkeeper, fantastic book. In fact, many have said it is the bookkeeping business Bible, really. If you haven't read that book, listener, go out, get it. It's awesome. We've got a bunch of resources for that book in the community as well. But Deb spends a whole chapter on that. It's a blueprint for you building your business. Don't overthink this. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. We've got the people that have gone before you are sharing people like Deb, Michael Gerber, Peter Cook. They've helped grow businesses like this, and we're talking in the tens of thousands. Don't try and reinvent that wheel, right?
Yes. Just someone has said, I'm just going to do what Deb does.
That's
or what
right.
Deb has done.
That's right. And you're a mentor to now hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bookkeepers all over the world, which is really, really fantastic. Deb, it has been such a pleasure having you again on the podcast. And I know I'm going to reach out again and have you back.
Yes.
But I just really, really sincerely thank you. The listeners, thank you for giving and donating your time to this podcast.
It's an absolute pleasure. I love sharing this information. Thanks very much for having me, Michael.
Yeah, our pleasure all the way. That wraps another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. And until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.